Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure I've ever come onto a stage to quite such a welcome. It is indeed my second visit here, and it's a great honour to be visiting again, and a great honour to be invited to join you in celebrating this wonderful anniversary, the 200 years of a very proud history of Presidency University. And even just in the last half hour, as I've been walking around your campus briefly, I think again I've been reminded that the history of Presidency is a history that's characterised by a very healthy mix, a very valuable mix of the science and the arts, extending together, working together, so that they can really serve as pioneers and visionaries, pushing back the boundaries in many different areas. And as we walk around your campus now, we see some absolutely wonderful posters. I've just had my picture taken in front of a few of them, because you really have got some very illustrious alumni. I've seen posters there, for example, of Satyajit Ray, the filmmaker, produced some fantastic films, and I know is a very celebrated director. We know, of course, that another of your alumni is Swami Vivekananda, who really did very much to help promote understanding of different faiths and multi-faith relationships. And then, of course, you've got the Nobel Prize winner in economics, Amartya Sen, who's done so much to help, or did so much work, unparalleled work in developmental economics. But many of you might know that I'm actually a molecular scientist. I'm a biochemist, and the picture I chose to have my photograph taken next to outside was that of Jagdish Chandra Bose, who was an absolutely fantastic molecular scientist. And people ask the question, he asked the question in many ways, do plants feel pain? And the answer really is, well, yes, they do in their own way. And of course, he used many techniques that he developed himself to understand just how plants do feel pain, understand the mechanism of signaling in plants. And the work that he did really set up an entire new field of research in that area. But there is someone else in this room that I've got a great deal in common with, and that is your Vice-Chancellor, my very good friend, Professor Lockyer. Because not only are we both Vice-Chancellors, but we are indeed both biochemists. We share an enthusiasm for the same sort of disciplinary fields. And your Vice-Chancellor has done really much in the fields of infectious disease to help understand the molecular basis of those diseases. And of course was also a past chairperson of the Department of Biochemistry at the Bose Institute in Calcutta. So very fantastic Vice-Chancellor to have, and great to be back with you again. Now, when I was last here, about 18 months ago, I had the pleasure to give a talk on my own research. But today, for this symposium, I'm here more in my capacity as Vice-Chancellor, and I thought I would share some of my views about how we should be looking forward as universities to the future. Presidency University's had an illustrious 200-year history, illustrated by these illustrious alumni that you have. My university, University of East Anglia, UEA, is only 50 or so years old. We celebrated our 50th birthday a few years ago. And so we've been looking forward to the next 50 years of our history, and I've been developing a new vision for the university to help us do just that. And in thinking about the future, especially in today's environment, I feel that one area that we want to really promote the development of is entrepreneurship and diplomacy, and academic diplomacy. And I think that these areas are pertinent to both the arts and the sciences. We've got a number of students in the room today, I know, and I just wonder, the students in the room, indeed anyone in the room, but mostly the students, how many of you think of yourself as entrepreneurs? If I ask students, how many of you are entrepreneurs? Put your hands up if you think that you are. I think I can see one. One out of 2 or 3, no, it's 1, 2, 3, not very many. How many of you think that you're diplomats? 1 or 2 more. I think that as we develop universities in the future, we need to help you to understand that you're all entrepreneurs and you all are diplomats. And I think that you need to be entrepreneurs and diplomats as we go forward and recognise the skills that you have in those areas inside you. And as universities, I think we have a duty to draw those out. And I'll try to explain why over the next half hour or so. Now, when I think of Calcutta, and I find it again on my second visit, and I think of my own city of Norwich, I find two things that they have in common. They're both very vibrant cities. They've got vitality. They've got people with vision. And I think those sort of cities, those sort of environments, the universities that we're all from, are potential hotbeds for entrepreneurship. And as I develop my university, that's something I have very much in my mind. How do we capture that potential for entrepreneurship? And as I reflect on 2016, I've become all the more mindful that we need to do that. If you look at 2016 through the lens of British education, it was a really quite momentous year. It was a year in which we find ourselves, at the end of it, having to prepare to leave the European Union. We had a big debate last year, I was very much part of it, of the importance of the European Union for universities. And as we were having those debates, I realised as I was sitting on the platforms with many politicians that actually the academic views of universities were being dismissed by the public at large. Indeed, not really even considered by the politicians. And I also found that actually I didn't hear a lot of truth in the debates that I was part of. And it made me begin to realise, especially when we got the result that we were to leave the European Union, that the UK was to leave the European Union, that as universities we needed to do much more to help our communities understand what it is the university offers to the community, what it offers culturally, what it offers economically, what it offers educationally. And if we don't do that, then people won't really listen to us when we're then making arguments for a particular viewpoint, whether it's about whether the UK should stay in the European Union, or whether it's a particular viewpoint around a solution globally for climate change. And so it was with some interest that I read at the end of last year what the word of the year was from the Oxford English Dictionary. Does anyone know what the word of the year was? Again, the students, you look as if you do. Yes, please. It was post-truth, indeed. And I've been sitting on debates around why I felt it was good for universities for the UK to stay in the European Union. And I was worried about the degree to which there seemed to be an absence of truth in many people's arguments. And so post-truth became the word of the year. And it's defined in the Oxford Dictionary as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. And the editors of the dictionary said that the use of the term post-truth increased by 2,000% in 2016 compared to 2015. Became associated a little bit with this man, perhaps, fairly or unfairly. And it certainly resonated with me as I've been on panels debating Brexit, and it maybe resonates more around the world as we await the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States. And so again, as we move forward, I think we have to think, how do we as universities operate in a post-truth world? What does it mean for presidency? What does it mean in the context of Calcutta in India? And as academics, should we be wary of public opinion now, or should we embrace it? We certainly have to think about how we engage with it in this post-truth world. And I think it's in our interests as universities as we go forward for us to do that. I think for me this does also reflect the fact that the current political world in which we live is a political world in which perhaps we now are finding people appealing more to the heart, to the feeling, rather than to the head, where perhaps the world of truth actually lives. And I know that speaking as a scientist, I find this potentially difficult and actually also potentially dangerous. And it does mean that I think we need to look at the future in a way in which we need to try and find clarity where currently there isn't as much as I'd like. So we come back to what universities are. They're places of learning, they're places to raise aspirations, they're places to make discoveries. They're places where we feel that we can make a positive difference to the world in which we live. And by reflecting our collective achievements through anniversaries like Presidency's Bicentenary, we need to start to think about those long-term contributions in this post-truth world. How we continue to create knowledge and the way it contributes. How scientific knowledge will contribute going forward. And how we will actually develop entrepreneurial knowledge. Because I think entrepreneurs will be seen to be something that people will embrace in a post-truth world. This has been the case for centuries, I know. But at the moment, my sense is that universities risk being ignored. We risk being islands that are cut off from the world in which we live. And certainly, as here in Calcutta, India's primary city of intellectual culture, I don't think we can allow that to happen. Now, in this post-truth world, it's actually a moment to just reflect a little bit as well about the sorts of experiences that we've had as universities. One experience we had in the post-truth world emerged in the area of climate change. Many of you as scientists will know that climate change is an important area. And climate change is an area where many of us around the globe are seeking to find solutions. But it might surprise you to know that not everybody wants us to find those solutions, or so it appears. Not everyone even believes that there are issues. And as a university, we, as two universities, Presidency and UEA, we seek to address global issues. We think of global issues such as climate change. We think of global issues such as energy security, water security, food security, and maybe the emergence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And we assume that people want us to come up with solutions for those. We assume that people believe the evidence for them. One lesson I think that you will learn very quickly as students going forward is that may not be entirely the case. And an experience we had there a couple of years ago was around ClimateGate. And it's this experience that led me to be particularly moved by the post-truth world. A few years ago, our university suffered a major cyber attack. And in that cyber attack, and again, cyber attacks are also quite topical at the moment because you've seen in the news cyber attacks perhaps made by the Russians, possibly, with respect to the American presidential election. A few years ago, our university was submitted to a cyber attack, and thousands of emails related to climate change and studies on climate change were stolen. It was attempted to use these emails nationally to discredit research behind climate change and challenge the whole issue of global warming. It became an international scandal, inverted commas, and was called ClimateGate. And the issues were raised in governments all over the world, and many inquiries were set up. I was the executive dean of the science faculty at the time. We were summoned to parliamentary inquiries in the UK. People questioned our funding. In America, because we got money from the US Department of Energy, US senators were calling for prosecution of criminal scientists. There was personal abuse. There was media frenzy. And in the end, the research that we were doing was actually subjected to intense international scrutiny and review, but was eventually widely accepted as being solid. But what this showed was that the whole process of studying major global issues can actually expose scientists to actually attacks in the press that you don't envisage as a scientist. So you emerging scientists, your students who are studying for your PhDs, your masters at the moment, and are addressing major global issues, perhaps don't expect that one day people will challenge you in quite this aggressive way. And so, as we go forward, we need to also think about how you're going to deal with it when you need to present your research in that post-truth world. And one area there which I think is going to become important is an area that we call academic diplomacy. That's an area that we're developing at our university. My colleague here, Daniel Rycroft, is particularly prominent in that area. And academic diplomacy can be taken at two levels. At one level, it pertains to how universities, as organisations with international outreach, connect with each other in mutually beneficial ways. And that's the sort of thing we're doing at the moment. That's the sort of thing that we are comfortable with as academics. But at another policy-facing level, it's about how universities play a role as guardians of transnational and intersectorial knowledge creation. And I think academic diplomacy is going to be of increasing importance in this current post-truth age. And that it's through academic diplomacy, through international collaborations around academic diplomacy, that new ideas can be generated, but that we can work with governments, with enterprises, with businesses, but with the public at large and with the press to ensure that they understand the truth behind our research and help us to mitigate the challenges on which we're researching. Now, this slide also mentions social entrepreneurship, and in the second half of my talk, it's on enterprise and entrepreneurship that I want to focus. And as I've already said, I think this should lie at the heart of a future vision for universities. It certainly lies at the heart of the future vision for my university. We launched a new plan for the university last year. It got quite a bit of press attention. And in that plan, we were investing in the campus in a way that enables us to drive enterprise and entrepreneurship from our students. I've already asked the students in this audience how many of you think you're entrepreneurial. Not many of you do. But you are. Students, the 15,000 students at my university, are, in my view, at the most creative, most innovative, enterprising and entrepreneurial stages of their lives. And I think that as universities, it's up to us, as university vice-chancellors, it's up to us to ensure that we have infrastructures in place to capture that entrepreneurship, to make sure that our students can actually use that entrepreneurship in a way that most helps them as they go out into this new world. For me, the entrepreneur is creative. The entrepreneur is innovative. The entrepreneur is an independent thinker. The entrepreneur has a potential to be successful. Whether as a great writer, whether as a great engineer, a great explorer, a great inventor, all these people have entrepreneurial skills, the skills that you have and that we need to bring out of you. And this world that we are going to be moving into is, for me, the world of those entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are also people who, in communities, we celebrate, because entrepreneurs give back to communities. They engage in philanthropic projects. The Reuben Foundation, which was set up by Britain's wealthiest entrepreneurial brothers, both Indian-born, has contributed hundreds of millions to education and health, not just in the UK, but around the world. Entrepreneurs being philanthropic. Many of them use their skills to make a real contribution to society. And I believe that entrepreneurship is alive and kicking well in both the UK and the Indian societies. And in the UK, entrepreneurship has, there's a strong tradition of entrepreneurship coming out of India's expatriates. They've contributed greatly to the rapid growth of the UK. Now, I was reminded of this recently when last year we awarded Lord Bilamoria an honorary doctorate of civil law. Now, many of you may or may not know Lord Bilamoria, but he came to the UK as a young man, and starting from very little, and certainly against challenging odds, he actually set up Cobra Beer, the most popular beer in the UK, one of the most popular at least. And he set this up, this remarkably successful business, he set it up as a student using entrepreneurial thinking. He's now a permanent member of the House of Lords, he's Chancellor of Birmingham University, and more recently he's been working closely with our university, with UEA, on our India Dialogue, India 70 Dialogue programme, which is in close cooperation with Daniel Rycroft, who's here today. So he was a student entrepreneur and is now an inspiration to many students around the UK. It was for that reason that we wanted to offer him an honorary degree so we could work closely with him, so he's now arguably one of our alumni as well. And we invited him to open our new Enterprise Centre. Now, as part of creating an entrepreneurial culture in universities going forward, we need to invest in the infrastructure. And so we invested in a new Enterprise Centre, built it with locally sourced materials. It's a beacon of sustainability and itself a feat of great enterprise. But in it, the teaching facilities are actually interfaced with homes for local businesses. There's startup space, there's incubation space for student ideas, and so it provides a tremendous resource for our student entrepreneurs and reflects investment in the university's entrepreneurial future. In the UK, I think more generally, that spirit of entrepreneurship is actually getting a lot of traction, because we actually have programs on the television like Dragon's Den as well, which are watched by millions, where people pitch ideas to a panel of dragons. And actually, I think our students watch those and they get stimulated by that idea of entrepreneurship as a consequence. We also see in our schools numerous competitions for setting up small businesses, and nationally as well. And certainly we were very pleased recently when our students won one of those competitions, a competition for environmental entrepreneurs, and were actually personally congratulated by the then Minister of Education last year. Their plan was based on recovering lost heat from electrical appliances and converting it back into electricity again, something close to my heart as a scientist, and was pitched to experts in an innovative way for supermarkets to save energy and decrease their costs. So I think in the past, entrepreneurship has been seen to be divorced from academia, but I think as we go forward, we find ourselves integrating it more into academic activities and the mission of academia. And for me, that's absolutely critical if we're going to stay competitive as universities. One area I think that we need to look at when we develop an entrepreneurial university is also the question of how we actually lead by example. And one of the examples that we could give here is that actually we've looked to our leaders to help lead the entrepreneurial university. And two of the leaders that we appointed recently at the university were key figures in the entrepreneurship in the country. Our new Chancellor, Karen Jones, actually launched Café Rouge, which was a chain of cafes around the UK. And she was an alumni of the university, and actually an arts and humanities alumnus, and provides a great figurehead now for arts and humanities students to see that the arts and humanities alumni can do great entrepreneurial things in business. Our Chair of Council, Joe Greenwell, also recently appointed, was another UEA Arts and Humanities graduate. And he actually graduated from us and went on to lead Ford and become president of Ford UK. And so, one thing in developing entrepreneurial campuses is the sense of having figureheads that students could look up to. We've seen Lord Bunamoria. We see figureheads as our leaders as well. And the other thing about developing entrepreneurial campus is actually ensuring that students recognise that being entrepreneurial gives them the skills that they need for the future. When students come to university, whether they come to university from India, from the UK, from China or Turkey, whether they're studying sciences or the arts and humanities, they'll all want to know how will the university prepare me for the world of work, and equally pertinently, the workings of the world. So, what do we need to do for our campuses then? Well, we need to establish an enabling infrastructure. We've seen our Enterprise Centre for that. We need to demonstrate support at a senior level. We need to show role models like the leaders of the university. And we need to put in place support for our staff to also undertake entrepreneurial activities. We need to actually embed entrepreneurial activities into our schools. So every one of our schools has a faculty director of research and enterprise and entrepreneurial activities. We give all of our academic staff entitlements to 30 days of consultancy so they can work with businesses. We've provided and developed a research and enterprise division which invests large amounts of money in the interface with businesses, inviting some 500 plus businesses to the campus every year to meet our students, to work with our students and to work with our staff. And we also have engaged with our entrepreneurial alumni, so they become mentors for our students. We've seen the Chancellor is an entrepreneurial alumni, our new Chancellor. Our new Chair of Council is an entrepreneurial alumni. But our alumni have also helped us to set up an enterprise fund, putting millions of pounds into student enterprise every year. And as well as providing financial support for helping students start up businesses, these entrepreneurial alumni also come and give their time to mentor our students and give them the actual knowledge that they need to develop their businesses. Learning that actually failure in business gives us as many lessons as success. And 2 or 3 years into this, for us, the results are looking very good. 3 years ago, when we started out on this process, we were ranked some 100th in the country for the numbers of startups that we set up, the numbers of licenses that we granted. Now UEA in the UK is ranked firmly in the top 10, with last year 128 student startup companies, and also now generating a substantial amount of our annual income, some 15%, from enterprise-based activities. So this investment in infrastructure, this harnessing your alumni, can give results to the university as well. Also, earlier on I mentioned that when we built our Enterprise Centre, we've made a focus around a low-carbon building. And as you develop an entrepreneurial environment, you can think about what your theme is. And we talked about climate change earlier. One of the key areas for our university, one of the things we're known for is our credentials as a low-carbon sustainable university that studies issues such as climate change. So we launched a low-carbon innovation fund with money from the European Union. And this is a £75 million fund that is now co-invested with private sector into some 70 low-carbon businesses in the region. So low-carbon as a flavour for entrepreneurship is UEA's way. Then we need to work with our curricula to ensure that we embed entrepreneurship into our curricula, really from the first day in which the students join us at undergraduate and postgraduate level. But at postgraduate level, we also put bespoke courses on, which our undergraduate students actually can move on to when they graduate from us. So we offer MScs in Enterprise and Business Creation to enable students to develop business ideas, working with our entrepreneurial alumni, and we will invest in their ideas if their ideas merit investment, using our Enterprise Fund. We've got an MSc in Creative Enterprise, the first creative entrepreneurship in the UK. And that links creativity to entrepreneurship in a way that really talks to the creative industries and the artist as a creative entrepreneur. And also as a university, we're located on something we call the Norwich Research Park. And this Norwich Research Park has the space and the facilities to allow companies to come onto our park and develop their businesses, and the space to enable students who develop businesses to actually grow their businesses on the park in cooperation with a number of world-leading research institutes that sit on our park with us. So we're fortunate, of course, to have this tremendous resource, because on this park we have world-leading food research institutes, world-leading plant science institutes that mean that we can actually provide the skills and expertise for helping entrepreneurs develop in all sorts of different areas, from the creative industries, from the arts and humanities, right through to the sciences. And also, as we develop this entrepreneurial vision, we want to do it in partnership. And one reason why I'm here in India on this visit in Calcutta again is to explore partnerships whereby we can help students work in each other's universities, learn about different kinds of activities in each other's universities, and actually develop a global perspective which helps develop that entrepreneurial spirit. Oops, sorry. So in closing my talk, in this post-truth world, I think that we need to enable colleagues in both sciences and humanities to develop joint programs together and to work together. We need to be cognizant of the need to pursue areas such as academic diplomacy so that we can actually challenge this, the almost anti-truth philosophies that are coming out in a post-truth world. And I think that we must therefore not wander unknowingly into this post-truth era, but actually grasp hold of truth and use it in new ways. In ways that might inspire a new generation of scientists and humanists, in ways in which we still show a firm commitment to shared educational values and to the understanding that higher education is precisely that. It's about an education at a higher level, but also recognise that universities can't be islands, that we need to change as well. And we need to now develop our academic vision in a way that molds, that evolves the academic vision into a vision for an entrepreneurial future. And to do this, we need to give our students the skills that they need to make a real difference in this new world, and in which they can show others that actually the universities in which they're in which they're being educated, are drawing out their entrepreneurial spirits in a way that would be the benefit to their communities and the world at large. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Happy to answer any questions or points raised.
Entrepreneurship programs which translated into startups.
Yes.
If you could share a couple of concrete examples,
Yeah.
and also tell us which fields the students came from and how they transgress the different.
Yeah.
Just one or two.
So we've got examples from a number of fields. I can give one example in chemistry, for example, where we recognise that this is a nice example for the molecular sciences. The process of taking in a drug and metabolizing it means that when you metabolize it, some of the products of that metabolism appear in your sweat. And so we developed from student research a business called Intelligent Fingerprinting, which actually takes a fingerprint and can tell forensics whether the person who left that fingerprint has been taking a particular drug or all sorts of drugs. And the key to that is that you will only have a positive response to that test if you've ingested the drug and actually metabolized it. So it's not sufficient to have been carrying the drug. So you can actually prove that someone, perhaps at the scene of a crime, is a drug taker, and that helps the police to know, maybe narrow down what they're looking to. And that's now a multi-million investment. Other areas are new companies that are working in the digital creative areas. So computing study scientists working with arts and humanities graduates, putting in place new virtual reality programs, etc. So using the skills of computing with the vision of creative industries. We've even got people who have developed new forms of chocolate and marketing a new kind of chocolate in the same way that Lord Villamoria marketed a new beer. You think there was no room for a new beer, but there actually is, and they've actually marketed a new kind of chocolate. Not as sweet as some chocolates, more to people's tastes. Chocolates which can be vegan, so that you don't actually have to have milk products in them. So there's always markets that you can find. But the key thing is that someone needs the idea, and they need to be able to talk to someone about that idea, and then you need to actually invest in it. At the stage where it's actually in what we call the valley of death, So you go from idea to business, but there's a funding gap in between. And you won't get banks or even venture capitalists to help you through that funding gap. That's where you need to do it yourself. And that's what the enterprise fund is for, because it's high risk and you probably won't get a return. 9 out of 10, or maybe 99 out of 100 of the, let's say 9 out of 10, it sounds a better number, of the ideas that you invest in will fail. And so they should, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have been high risk enough. And that's another thing that you need to teach the students, is that serial entrepreneurs have failed more times than they've succeeded. But when you get the success, you know that you must go with it. I'm okay, I can hear you, yeah. You already have the skills you need. You've arrived to university with those. What we need to do is to ensure that you don't spend your time at university just pursuing that academic degree program that you came to pursue. So we need at a very early stage to help you to recognise that university is more about just emerging at the end of it with the degree that you came to get. It's an opportunity to learn so much more. And so we'll put in place opportunities for you to lead, to engage with businesses, to engage with charities, to do voluntary work. Things that are actually using your creative and innovative skills in a way that sits a little bit outside of your core curriculum activity. So as you do more and more of that from an early stage, you become more confident, and you get to have a better sense of the other skills that you have. And then we'll actually put specific support into our schools of study to begin to offer opportunities to work with, for example, directors of enterprise, to draw ideas that you might have out of you. So, for example, many people will be doing projects in the sciences as part of their third-year program, working in laboratories with other students. In those laboratories now, you have a real sense of, if you come up with a great idea that actually has potential application, we'll help you take that forward. So it's also knowing that you, and we'll help you to know where to look for that support. And ensure that that idea isn't lost, rather than, oh, this is a good idea. Oh, yes, it is, isn't it? This is a good idea. Yes, it is, isn't it? You must talk to, and let's see what we can do with it.